My name is Pearlescent Moon and welcome back to another video. I've been playing Minecraft since December in 2014, where I bought Minecraft for my PS3 console the day after Christmas. I waited so long in line for it in the Boxing Day sales, and I just had to get it. I was waiting for it by that time. Anyway, after buying the game, I immediately fell in love with it, and this is going to be the topic of today's video. Today, I shall be transforming my very first Minecraft world. I had started this world originally with 3 other friends, so their builds are also encompassed within, which I will be crediting when their builds pop up on screen. They also had the liberty of teaching me how to play Minecraft, as I didn't know really how to at all back then, and I thought lapis was diamond. And I'll also tell you a few other stories throughout the rest of the video. Anyway. I went into this with the aim of keeping the original feel of the world I was trying to create when I first built it. So I haven't added any extra buildings, and most of the old interior is carried into the new version. The final result looks like I added more structures, but most of it was just hidden by so many trees. A lot of which were also just floating. Good old nostalgia of not cutting down those dastardly trees. Anyway, let's get into it. So I'm starting exactly where I first started playing, my own very first oak wood box. Now, this building does carry its interior beneath the surface, as it's nestled into the side of a hill, so it's a lot bigger than it looks. The building also continues out towards the ocean and ends in some sort of observation tower, which I tackle later on in the video. I thought it could do with a bit of extra height and style, so I added a couple floors on top of it and removed all of the masses of trees surrounding it. There were just too many to be able to see the structure correctly. A proper roof was also needed, so I just added a bit of a slanted frame roof combined with a couple of extra flat sections to give it a bit of interest. I then moved on to a nearby hot tub that I attempted to make originally. However, I just didn't know how water worked, so you'll later see in the video that any structure item with water in it just isn't filled correctly. So much water flow. I decided to expand the original idea and make it into a full house pool with the extra little hot tub off to the side, as some of those fancy mansion pools seem to have. I also added a bit of a shade roof to cozy it up a little, just in case you want to get out of that hot sun. After that, I tackled this little shack in front, which I believe was supposed to be some sort of dog or pet house. It never really got used, but it's there, so I made it up in the same style as the house to match. Add a little tree off to the side and some garden work, and we can move on to the next area. So it's time to move to the back of the house, to the observation tower that I mentioned earlier. This faces off into the ocean for a nice view, but is also built next to a jungle tree as some sort of support for the structure. I decided to once again transform it into the same style as the house for consistency, but all the interior has stayed the same and the concept still remains to be for observation. The very open feel of the glass and lack of walls on the structure was transferred to the new version to enjoy the surrounding scenery. I had kept the jungle tree as I felt it was a cute addition and kept some of that nostalgia in the exterior. There was a lot of land out the back of the house and along the coast, so I decided to transform it into a wheat farm for some survival-friendly logic. I didn't seem to have many farms back in that time. Adding some rough cobblestone walls and small bushes or plants helps create some separation and interest to the land, as well as give it a bit of a garden vibe. Vanilla trees also lacked a bit of custom interest, so I created my own jungle tree to paste around for a slightly more refined feel. In the end, I did feel like things seemed a bit cramped together, but I felt that it was the atmosphere I was trying to go for in my original build idea, so I decided to go along with it and go pretty crazy. At the very least, there's not so many trees that you can't see anything anymore. Not to mention there's no more floating trees. Dastardly things, those. Moving on to the centre area, I again removed a whole bunch of trees, both floating and grounded to clear up some space to see everything. I continued on by deciding to add a very small, cozy river that flowed underneath the original pathing, and then added a bridge over the top of it for the path to continue. I wasn't exactly happy with the bridge design in the end, but it'll do. During this process, I again refined the path to our coarse dirt and spruce combo. Once that was done, I added a small sheltered area to the centre spot, more cobble-like walls to break up areas, and then filled in the riverbeds. I thought the sheltered idea could do with a nice sectioned area underneath to follow suit to the original design. I think I sectioned it off in my first build to escape mobs or something. I honestly can't remember. I just decided to carry that through to the new version for consistency. Now is the time to transform one of my old friends' homes. This house was originally by the random 90, and it looked like he had started a roof but didn't end up finishing it. I decided to try and go with what was already there and completed it for him. The interior is all the same, and as much as I'm known for not liking raw birchwood, I kept it as part of the house's character. I figured a nice palette with natural browns and greens were a good mix for this, to keep the nice homely style, as well as tying it in with a bit of nature. The shape of the house was kept, and the A-frame visual of the house was also maintained during the transformation. The roof felt a bit plain, so I decided to add some small dormers on each side of it. Add in a couple farms and his original old chairs, and we've set the scene. So now we're on to the big one, the floating mansion. I remember dying a couple times in survival while building this originally, probably more than a couple times. Anyway, because I didn't know you could crouch to stop yourself falling off the edges until a friend told me. Gotta love the memories. As much as I thought floating houses were cool back then, I felt like grounding it in the transformation. I wanted to give it a sense of purpose instead of just having a giant mansion floating in the sky. From those thoughts, I had decided to add this weird root-like terrain that attached to the ground and came up to meet the mansion. Pillars of sorts made out of terrain, I suppose. Adding those pillar forms allowed me to place them in between structures built underneath the mansion and served as a viable solution to the problem I had. I left the large stairway going up to the front door as I felt it was a key element to keeping it recognisable between the transformation and the original build. I might have built things differently if I had no constraints. Continuing on, now comes the transformation of the actual mansion itself. The base structure is very boxy and provided no real points of interest aside from that pyramid roof and side on top, so I had to add a lot of depth to it. I began by adding on geometric shapes to make it feel a bit more 3D and varied up the Y coordinate to add more elements to look at. I kept it basic with a regular A-frame roofing to match the original pyramid roof. This also follows suit with the first house that I originally transformed. The palette was also a very bland cobblestone grey, so I added more colour by using hardened clay, or terracotta as it's now called, spruce wood, oak wood and some dark green wool. I felt like those colours tend to work together rather well, despite the shape not being ideal. I ended up turning the pyramid roof into a large A-frame to match with the smaller ones and added small towers jutting out of it for extra points of interest. If you don't know me by now, I'll also say that as much as it's not cost effective in survival, I do like using anvils as a form of balcony fencing. They look quite nice with some carpets on top. And if you've seen the Artisan series, you'll also know I like to use hoppers if I'm not using anvils, so it's usually one of the other. Moving on to the back, I did pretty much the same thing as the front, but added in a couple extra balconies to make things balanced and exciting, as some may say. I still wanted to keep the general shape recognisable, so the cobblestone L it had originally going on is still visible. In the end, I decided the cobblestone pyramid of blocks on the side of the building was a bit unsightly, so I kept the concept but in a different way. I decided to add diagonal wooden beams that jutted out from a side window piece. The farm was also a bit bland, so I just added a simple roof structure over the top to match the rest of the building style. This diamond here was pretty much my first attempt at making a sphere. I had no idea what I was doing and had no point of reference while making it. When I saw it was looking like a diamond, I just ended up turning it into one completely. So well, now I was stuck with a diamond to transform, and I originally didn't know what I was going to do with it. In the end, I just ended up going with some sort of spaceship sci-fi steampunk-like thing. I don't even know what it is, but I think it turned out alright. I tried to get a winding stairway working like the original design, but found it just wasn't reaching adequately and turned it into a spiral air thing in the end. Kinda looks like a bit of a propeller, I suppose. Instead, the player can get in through a water stream that I added at the bottom, which I also added later off camera after realizing I forgot about an entry point. The stairs climbing up to the diamond were also a bit rough, so I carved a bit more into the terrain and moved them into a position that centralized the diamond structure correctly, also adding in a few extra details along the way. Now we can move on to the pool area seen below the diamond piece. As the original was just a basic glass box with a very horribly water-filled pool, I started out by tidying up the water and the base pool block choice. Back then, I thought that raw birch would work as the pool flooring, but decided to change it to furnaces this time round for a nice grey, grid-like texture. I still wanted the sides to be separated from the bottom of the pool, so I added prismarine around the edges. The glass box, although nice to look out of, was also quite bland, so I added some vertical wood structure pieces and a nice blue-toned roof to follow a pool theme. You'll see throughout the video that I decided to keep each building to their initial theme, rather than trying to style match everything. I felt it kept up with the original concepts of each structure, as well as creating elements of interest within the scene. Time to tackle the nether brick horror, as I'd like to call it. I attempted to be a bit different back then after discovering nether brick, and even the nether. I was so surprised when I heard of another dimension. Anyway, I thought to try just randomizing my structure shape to make it more interesting. This didn't quite work, and the roof even ended up being a weird mess. However, I attempted to actually keep this shape in the transformation. Any structure base shape edits were quite light in terms of just adding an extra diagonal into a spot that looked a bit odd on the corner, despite it looking quite different in the end in height. It was quite a challenge to adapt to the odd shape it had, but it was quite fun. Sometimes you just need a bit of extra challenge. Don't be afraid to challenge yourself when you're building structures. It makes it kind of worth it in the end. Again, I decided to go with an A-frame roof to somewhat tie it in with the other buildings, but I still kept its original palette, aside from adding some dark oak wood here and there as some variation. There were also little spots around the map that needed some decoration, like this small mineshaft entrance here. But there's not much to say about that, so let's move on. Continuing on to the back garden of the nether brick building. I didn't even really have anything in mind for this, so the design did turn out a bit on the weird side. But hey, it matches the building, I guess. Now this house didn't actually have his full name on it, so I'm just gonna have to give you the general idea of his name. He had numbers in it, but I can't remember the numbers. But anyway, this next building was originally created by Zavikiller. To my belief anyway. When coming across my old friends' houses, I didn't want to touch them too much, but still wanted to spruce them up a bit to fit with the new look. Here I simply just added a bit of a garden and created a house extension off to the side to take it away from its box-like nature for a new element. Other than that, it was just some small palette changes, but not much else. The last friend I mentioned had actually built his house further away, and isn't in the area of transformation. Just in case you guys might be wondering later where the third house is. Oh hey, we're returning to the mansion again. Would you look at that? I jump around a lot. Well, this time I felt like it needed a bit more variation in its palette, so I just added a bit more colour with anvils, jungle wood, polished granite and glass types on the windows. I also felt like adding a unique element to the A-frame roofs with just adding some slabs on top of the stairs. That's about it. To top it all off, I decided to transform the first and second floor interior of the mansion. There was so much space and I just wanted to do something with it. I didn't do much else with interiors of other buildings, so most of them still have the original versions inside. It felt like it was proof that I transformed structures instead of removing them entirely and building something else. Anyway, that's the last piece to transform. I don't usually do videos like these where I explain the process, but people have asked in the past, and I thought this video might be fitting to give it a go. If you felt like it was too long, that I was rambling, or even liked me doing this, please let me know. I'd love any feedback you may have on this style of video. As an end note, apologies to everyone for not having any content for you in the past weeks, as I became rather busy. I've been seeing a lot of new people arrive as well, so much that we hit 29,000 of you lovelies. All in all, welcome if you're new, and I hope to have more content for you guys soon. thank you for sticking by and supporting the channel. If you have any suggestions of what you might like to see next, please let me know in the comments below. I love you all very much and thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye guys.